everyone, this is Christina Barr, and you're watching Black Tea News. One day I'm going to let you folks see me dance as the intro goes on because I really like it. I do get some compliments on it. I'm really proud of my intro, but the music is quite good. It's a jam. It's a jam. I think there's another newish term that people use, but I can't think of it because I'm just not hip and in with it. But anyway, hello everyone. This is Christina Barr. You're watching Black Tea News, and today I wanted to talk about the pronoun police, and I've done some stuff talking about like transgender stuff, and some people have pushed back on it, so I wanted to cover it. Plus, when I was at Bible study yesterday, someone was telling me about something that happened they said it was at the Stellar Awards the other night, and that really turned them off, where they mentioned something about pronouns. And so I wanted to talk about it a little bit, my thoughts and philosophies on it. I also want to talk a little bit about the recall in California with Gavin Newsom. There's a lot of people on the ballot. I'm so interested how that will all turn out, and I've talked about it a little bit. It's an interesting story, especially since they tried to make sure that Larry Elder wasn't on the ballot. They played some games, but he was able to stay on it. And I do want to talk a little bit about COVID and Biden and this how he's really just pushing it too far as his powers, but he's openly defying the Constitution and the separation of powers. But he doesn't care. But really quickly before we jump into it, I want to thank my today's sponsor, Brighter Michigan Pack. In their lovely studio. They enjoy when I say it, and I like to say it. They are not my boss. If I trigger you, there's no one to complain to. You're just going to have to be an adult and change the browser, however you're watching it. But they cannot help you. The facts and logic shall spread regardless. And also, I want to encourage you to go blacktnews.com. Check out different articles that I've written. Also check out merchandise that I have, like this cool like black tea mug with my logo and stuff on it. I really like this shirt, like the you are not that special shirt. Got it in all kinds of different colors. I do have in V-neck or unisex if you're male or female. I got this really cool Frederick Douglass shirt, who stood up for the Constitution, for all those folks out there who want to just make it seem like America is so terrible, so awful, and it always was for everyone. It definitely has been improved, but there's definitely some people now who want to tear some things back down. And also this Be Better Not Bitter shirt. And I also got to always show my goat hoodie that I love and adore, and it is so soft. It's so soft, and I do have it in multiple colors, and also not in a hoodie because it is hot out there, but look, it's summertime, and ladies, you know what that means. Air conditioning. Get a hoodie. Keep yourself warm. Or just roll up your sleeves. It's really comfortable. Really, really comfortable. Okay, so I normally like to start out with a meme, but today I just put out a TikTok that I want to share with you guys before I jump into the topics of the day. So this I just posted not too long ago, and it's regarding after I did a video with Biden, and he said, I don't care if you think I'm Satan reincarnated, and then he went on to talk about January 6th. And the context of that is, regardless of whether you like me or not, no one can deny that bad things happened with that situation, was the context of it. But everyone was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he said that. So I pieced together a video with that and other creepy things he said to, make a joke. A lot of people don't take it as a joke. But it wasn't supposed to be a joke. I mean, there's like a squawking eagle at the end of the video, so I think it's supposed to be evident that it's a joke. But so many people were like, did you hear Biden say the line about the blood of the children, like Democrats aren't drinking, some Republicans believe Democrats are drinking the blood of the children. And apparently he said it twice. I did not know anything about that line literally until after I had put it up. Because I promise you it would have made it there if I had known. So I wanted to use that line for a video for a minute. And so I clipped it together with a lot of things talking about abortion and so on. So I'm going to go ahead and play this video and dive into it a little bit before I go ahead and start with my topics of the day.
Are there people in the Republican Party who think we're sucking the blood out of kids?
Does the president believe that a 15-week-old unborn baby is a human being?
Are you asking me if the president supports a woman's right to choose? He does.
How is it fighting systemic racism when abortion, we well know, disproportionately affects minority children?
Communities that have been marginalized, underserved, adversely affected by persistent poverty is always going to be something the president fights for.
And it's an issue of fairness and justice for poor women.
And are you saying that a child on its due date, just hours before delivery, still has no constitutional rights?
Under our law, that is the case.
The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired.
A Planned Parenthood executive discussing selling fetal body parts. Harris sent police to his home and seized his film footage.
I'm not saying they're drinking the blood of children, but they're doing something shady, right?
So there's a lot to unpack there. So Biden said the context of the blood of the children is that someone was asking Biden about defunding the police. And they're like, well, Republicans are saying you guys are the party of defund the police. And he's like, well, some Republicans are saying that Democrats drink the blood of children. And that he just thought that was a really great comeback and like walked away, which was really bizarre. And some people cheered and like, yeah, that was great. It's like, that's just a weird thing to throw out there, I guess. So anyway, I don't think that they literally do that. God knows what some people actually do, but I pieced together a lot of those clips and sayings and stuff because there's some really dark things out there that people are doing. And whatever your stance is, a lot of people, the stance that people said that they had before was to say legal and rare, which there are reasons to why that doesn't make a lot of sense either, because why do you need it to be rare? Because it's abhorrent on a level, right? Like you want it to be available, but you acknowledge that it's not good. Well, if it's not good, then you need to weigh why it's not good, and it's not good because it's a life. It's, and that life should have rights, but just from a moral standpoint, it's alive, it's a baby, it's a child, so you know that you really should not be killing it. But anyway, it's evolved to the point where it's like so many people think no limitations, or they may not think that, but they won't nail any down for whatever political reason. So, I mean, you got that to be the case in New York and other places that are just like, as far as they can extend it, they'll extend it. In some blue states, and in red states they're trying to limit it as much as possible to get to the point where it's totally, you can't do it anymore. And they're trying to work their way up to the Supreme Court to eventually have cases where it's like they have to acknowledge that viability isn't really a good option, and that it's a life at conception, and then the rights should apply to it, and then eventually be able to just get rid of Roe v. Wade altogether. So Hillary Clinton, she had a line in there, and this happened during the 2016 debate, which it was really hard to find that clip for me. I had to go back. I had put it in another video I did when I was working at the Michigan Republican Party. I had to find like the exact phrasing of it, and then one site had did an article about it. But if you type in like, it kept trying to pull me to something that Marco Rubio had said about her, and that the PolitiFact tried to fact check on and said it was false, which it wasn't even that. It wasn't really false, and or they didn't even do it half true. They just rated it false because they wanted to protect her so bad on this issue. But is she technically correct about how, she says they don't have rights? I guess that's true in some regard, because you can decide to take the life of the child if you want to go ahead and abort it. However, and she was like, well, that's what the law is. That's what the law is. And so they mentioned the law to skate around applying what they think about it, the morality of it. And you can say it's not up to me, it's just about the law. But these people apply what they want to do to things all the time. And now to the point where they want your taxpayer dollars to fund it, and then also fund it like overseas. We've expanded beyond safe, legal, and rare. It's really extreme nowadays. So if I was on The View, I would have pushed her a little further and been like, okay, but do you think that we should acknowledge that they should have rights? And also another thing in the video, Jen Psaki, they asked if Biden thought that a child at 15 weeks, which I showed a 15-week fetus, do you believe that that is human? and she dodged the question. And she's like, well, are you asking if Biden believes that women have a right to choose? Yes. Like, no, that wasn't the question, Jen. So they don't even want to acknowledge the child in these debates. They only want to go back to women's health, women's rights, a women's choice, etc. And Nancy Pelosi creeped me out the other day. She said it maybe about a week or two ago when she was talking about when everyone was really on Biden and people, the Pope and everybody, or the Catholic Church. I guess not the Pope, but the church was just saying they didn't want to give him communion because he's a Catholic, but he's very pro-abortion, or putting in policies that are very pro-abortion. And so she says that she's a Catholic and she loves her kids, and you know, I won't question that or anything like that. But she believes in abortion. But then she went on and had this angle of basically that there's a lot of poor people who need it, poor women, and that really, out of the arguments for it, like financial reasons, really creeped me out. Because one, Americans, if you live in America, I mean, you can be discovered, you could have a talent, be discovered on the corner and bump into the right person. It could change your life. You could post something on Instagram and it could make it go viral and it could change your life. You have upward mobility as far as what you do working, especially if you graduate from high school, get a job, keep a job, and don't have a kid out of wedlock. You have a lot of upward mobility in America. Maybe not everywhere else in the world, but in America, absolutely, you have a lot of upward mobility. So your financial status, while you were a fetus in the womb, should not be a death sentence. And I've you know, with my family, we've had our ups, we've had our downs. We've lived in the suburbs, we've lived in a trailer park, we've been homeless before. But out of everything that happened in my life, I just can't imagine thinking to myself or saying, you know what, we really shouldn't have Tina, who's the youngest, because I could have had more toys, or life would have been a little bit easier. I wouldn't say that. So it's just really, really creepy to me when people are for it and they go the economic route. It's really strange to me. So I compiled all that together into that video, and also mentioned Kamala Harris and David Daleiden. He was someone who discovered Planned Parenthood, or got footage of them talking about selling baby body parts. And instead of going after Planned Parenthood, she got together, according to his story, the donors and stuff, and they're like, hey, you gotta shut him down. And they raided his apartment and took his stuff, but he still had stuff. But she decided to prosecute him with something that I guess what hadn't really been used before. So instead of holding Planned Parenthood accountable for selling baby body parts, she went after the person who was exposing them. So it ranges on different issues. In Northam, who was talking about what happens if a child is to survive abortion. You just make it comfortable, basically let it die out, I guess. But if the parents decide to change their mind, then they'll revive it or whatever. How about do no harm, just do your job and try to preserve life. So, and that got a lot of buzz when that came out in right-wing media, but, you know, Democrats kind of ignored it. By Democrats, I mean the mainstream media ignored it, or if they covered it, it was the coverage about the outrage rather than the outrageous thing that he said. So anyway, that's my latest TikTok that I dropped. Is Biden literally drinking the blood of children? Well, how would I know that? But I would assume not. I would assume not. But there's some pretty heinous things that these people are supporting. Some pretty heinous things. So let's move on. So after I left the studio yesterday, I went to a Bible study that we have, and with some with the youth in the church, and by youth is like everyone's like young adult or fresh adult. I don't not even fresh, but you know, we're like the oldest person in the group is 35 and it's younger. So everyone in the group is pretty much like 20 to 35 is the range. And so someone, you know, I was talking a little bit about politics when I came in because there was I was talking about a few trolls that were on my TikTok. And so someone was like, hold up. I'm like, what? And granted, I'm way more political than everyone else in the room, but there are other political people, but the person I started having a conversation with, not very political. And she said she was watching the Stellar Awards, which the Stellar Awards is on BET. It's a celebration of gospel music, just kind of like you have the VMAs or the MTV Music Awards or whatever, or American Music Awards and so on. The Stellar Awards would be the gospel equivalent, and this would have been like the 36th year they've been doing it. The Christian contemporary Christian version of the Stellar Awards would be like the Dove Awards, but there's a Stellar Awards. So she was watching the Stellar Awards, and one of the people got up. They were like introducing someone else who was going to come up, and they mentioned pronouns are important. And she said some of the people in the audience kind of like laughed a little bit, but she said she was so like kind of turned off by it, she didn't watch it for too much longer. And so she was complaining about it, and so we got into a conversation about it there. And so we're gonna talk politics, but man, that progressiveness that's trying to really worm its way through the church, that is not going to lead people down a good path. So here's where I stand with the pronouns. I'm not lying for you. I'm not lying for you. That's where I am. I'm not lying for you. So last night, I think it was last night, someone left a comment on one of my videos and said, I would think you, as a black woman, should be a little more kinder because you know what it's like to be discriminated against. And there's a lot of assumption in that, I think. So a lot of people just assume that racism is just so entirely rampant everywhere. I was having a conversation with someone like a few weeks ago at a party, and it was a black woman who's probably a little older than me, and she was talking about racism, and she's like, you know how it is. I'm just like, I don't know exactly what you're talking about, but she just had all these assumptions because we're both black. And I'm not saying I haven't faced racism, I haven't been discriminated against, but I wonder what people's distinction is when they say things like that. The discrimination that I have faced, well, I've faced discrimination for my faith for sure, but I have faced discrimination for racial things, but it's mostly from the perspective of you are going outside the lines that we drew for you. It's not the, hey, I hate black people, so I'm going to treat you like crap, or we don't like black people, so we're going to assume this about you, or we're going to assume that about you. Like, I had like microaggression, ignorant questions and things like that I had to deal with, especially when I moved out to like a rural school, for sure. But we call them microaggressions because they're microscopic. They don't matter too much, you know. When people would have questions, even though they're kind of like, I would try to answer them, you know, as nicely and calmly as possible, especially because you don't know how they might respond when they ask it to someone else, so I might as well be the person who's going to rationally explain things. But when I say people don't want to move out the box, I mean when I was going to school in Pontiac, which is a urban city with mostly population of black people, at least in my school, it was mostly black people, and there was a lot of Asians. We had a very high Hmong population in my area, Hispanics, and it seemed like white people were the minority in the school. But my issues that I had with race was it seemed like people were, I don't know, thought it was uppity or something, because I wouldn't speak Ebonics, which is so funny to me because I like mumble all the time, and my sister complains about it all the time. So it's not like I think I'm the most stellar speaker in the world, though people are kind and give me lots of compliments for my speaking, but people would say you're trying to act white. People would say that, and these were black kids who would say such awful things, and what I'm saying is not uncommon. I've heard other people have the same experience. So that was an issue I had to face. And face as in it happened, not something that I let distract me from being me or hinder me at all. I was always dedicated to being who I am without an injection of outside forces manipulating that at all. So the most discrimination that I face now, or racism that I face now, is really that deals with my race, but it's tied politically. And what I mean by that is people upset because I'm a black conservative. I face people like that like every day, and that's no exaggeration. You know, and that's because I'm posting online, putting stuff on TikTok, whatever. Especially like on TikTok, because I have more eyes on TikTok. And so people will say extraordinarily rude things, try to get under my skin, and so on. I don't let that hinder me. If anything, the most I'll do is comment, because I like to troll the trolls, I suppose, sometimes. But that's the most discrimination I'll face. Is someone who's like, how dare you think this way? They try to say I'm seeking white validation, or call me a coon Uncle Tom, which is really disrespectful to the origin of Uncle Tom. I mean, which ultimately did so much for black people. Most people who utter such phrases could never amount to that kind of legacy that character has. So that's a really unfortunate thing. So anyway, I thought that was interesting that they said that. And so I pondered about how I should respond, but I just ended up saying, it's cruel to lie to people. At least I think it is. I mean, first of all, I think it's immoral. And most people think it's wrong. They just think there's wiggle room. But I think it's abhorrent. I don't like it. I don't like when people lie to me. I find it so off-putting, especially when people you know and you're supposed to have a relationship with will lie to you. It's so off-putting. It's so off-putting to me when people will lie. So I don't find it to be kind to do that. To me, it just comes off as a total sign of disrespect. It comes off as cowardly and cruel and immoral and sinful. Thou shalt not lie. That's where I stand on it. So then we can get into the whole, can you change your gender? Can you identify whatever way you want to? Well, whether you believe I'm right or I'm wrong, because I believe that gender is tied to sex, and I think most people would agree with that. You can throw whatever definitions by who and so on at you. I did a video talking about that where I think I debunked it pretty good. Ben Shapiro did a video about transgender issues, and then Sam Lux, who is a trans woman, decided to do a video reacting to Ben's video. So I reacted to Sam's video, and Sam tried to define gender. Well, Ben made a point that people don't define gender unless they actually use the word. Like, you can't define female without actually using the word female, or woman without using woman. So Sam used a definition from WHO, and WHO was like, a woman is someone who has the female characteristics, or the characteristics of being a woman, or something along those lines. You can go watch that video I did responding. And I'm like, you just did the thing that Ben said that everyone will do. You just proved the point. So people can't even define what a woman is without usually saying what the word is. And if they'll try to explain how they feel like a woman or how they'll feel like a man, normally it's with a lot of things that they're deemed as stereotypes. Stereotypes that definitely don't fit all depictions of what a woman might feel like. I used to work with someone who hated to wear dresses. They despised it. They never liked it. They never wore it, whatever. They'd always wear pants. Like my youngest sister, not my youngest, my second youngest sister, she used to wear baggy clothes. She'd always say, I don't want to be a girly girl like you guys. And she wasn't talking about me, because I'm really not into makeup and all that kind of other stuff. It's just like, professional necessity, which always baffles me when people compliment my makeup. I'm just like, I do like 3 things, and I don't spend a lot of time on it. I don't really like to deal with it, but thank you. But she didn't like any of that stuff. She's like, I'm not gonna. She liked to, Mom didn't really have us like let us play in the mud or whatever. She didn't like that. But she liked to talk about boogers and just was gross. She was weird, and but she grew up. She started liking boys, and then her style like changed, and she eventually, became very, very feminine. She still likes to wear a t-shirt. She loves t-shirts, but there came a point of time she would risk being late to work if she had to still put on her eyeshadow, not eyeshadow, but like eyeliner and stuff. And she's married. She's got 3 kids. And there's this one fabulous picture of her while she's like breastfeeding her son. I believe it's her son. And she's like, and he's covered. And she's like leaning on the couch, and her hair is just kind of flipped. I'm just like, this is so fiercely feminine. Because she's like, I'm doing what I'm doing, but I'm still gonna look fabulous while doing it. But if she lived in a time where like there was a huge gender phenomenon, I don't know. I'm not saying that she would have gone that way or been confused in that way, but she did have some particular issues that a lot of people who tend to go that way with the fad that you're kind of seeing nowadays, that like Abigail Schreier and other people. She talked about her book and the Lisa Lippman studies and so on, because at one point she was depressed, and she was hanging out around other people who were depressed. And a lot of cliques decided to do stuff like that. But I'm not saying she would have felt that way, but I'm just glad that more people who were around that time didn't grow up where it's a fad. And I know people get really offended, but I don't know how you can deny it. I don't know how you can deny it. And there's other young women who have who've said such things. I watched a video last night where someone talked about how they had commented on one video about how they were glad that they grew up at a time where there wasn't such gender confusion, and they could just be a tomboy and have time to discover themselves. And there was maybe hundreds of exaggeration, but there were so many people under it, and she was reading comments of other people who said the same thing. And I've heard people say the same thing to me on TikTok and other apps and stuff, where they agree with that. They're glad that they're in this time and we're allowed to just kind of have a process than a diagnosis. So people need time to grow and to learn, but it's just so really enforced. So anyway, a lot of the stereotypes of being a woman, it doesn't fit everyone. It doesn't fit everyone. But I believe that sex and gender are very tied together. As a matter of fact, in Samantha Lux's video, when he quoted The Who in their definition of sex and gender, they did at least acknowledge they're tied together, which I also said in the video. You can go check that out. It's like my debunk of the debunk of the debunk is what I said in the video. But it's got a picture of Ben Shapiro, me, and Lux on it, and you just go right to my YouTube page and check it out. So I wanted to play a video of Ben Shapiro and talk about some of the things that he said about it, which I found kind of bizarre. Not in this particular video, but we'll go on. So this is what a pretty early video that he talked about, like I believe this is pretty early, the gender issue at a YAF conference.
I was just wondering, I agree with you that like biologically a man is a man and a woman is a woman. I was just wondering what you see the detriment of society, like why we can't like let a transgender like woman be called she or something.
Because it is a lie.
I agree.
Detrimental to society. So I think there are a couple of reasons. So yeah, sorry, you let him finish the question. That's fine.
No, I'm just wondering, what do you see? I understand it's lying. Like I was taught not to lie. I just don't understand what is so wrong about that specific lie.
Well, I mean, as opposed to other lies, I'm not sure there is anything wrong. I mean, I don't like all of them, but as far as that specific lie, I think that one of the problems that we have is this determination that men can become women and women can become men undermines some barriers between men and women that I think are useful and good, particularly in children. So if I have to teach my 3.5-year-old, or she's almost 4, if I teach my almost 4-year-old girl that she can become a boy, then I think that is not only lying to her, I think it's confusing her, and I think it's damaging to her psyche. One of the premises of the transgender movement is that human minds are completely non-malleable. That oddly enough, men are not men and women are not women, but if you are transgender, that is unchangeable, and that especially among children, if a 3 or 4-year-old has certain feelings, those feelings have to be taken completely seriously. We can't fight against them. We can't suggest that the kid will grow out of it. Instead, we have to say that this kid is inherently transgender. I can tell you, having kids are incredibly malleable. Kids are easily confused. And saying to a child, which is what the transgender movement would like to do, I mean, they're having drag shows in kindergarten now in some areas. When you do that, when you confuse kids about gender, you're doing the kids no favors. You're doing them or you could be doing significant damage to kids. Kids should not be confused about their biology. Kids should not be confused about their gender. And let's put it this way, just from a certain statistical standpoint, if it is true that the transgender suicide attempt rate is 40% over the lifetime, and if I am right, then more kids will be confused about gender, which, by the way, you do see. You've seen an uptick in transgender surgery in Europe. You've seen a greater identification as transgender overall. In places like Europe, malleable rates of transgenderism in Europe. If that's the case, then you're raising the suicide rates, presumably, if there's an association, between for young people who are now confused about gender. So I'm not in the mood for countenancing lies about what men and women are, specifically when I think that there is a goal of redefining a key term for the entire society.
Yeah, so I agree with all of that. And I think obviously the goal is to redefine society in a lot of different ways. But then Ben Shapiro, he seemed to like evolve his position, like they're having it's wrong to lie. They went through the damage of the lie, but he also has a position that I find really strange. Is that so? He has this rule that if publicly he will refer to people as their gender that that's defined by their sex, but if he was having a private dinner with someone, he would just refer to them with whatever way they want to be referred to. That baffles me because I'm like, the lie didn't stop. So and everyone knows your public position. So at that point in time, I understand you're trying to be respectful toward their feelings, but you're still like you're coddling them. You're well, I would say you're kind of circling around the truth, but you're just lying at this point. But everyone knows your public stance on it, so you just really are pandering to their feelings, and I don't know, maybe it makes that person feel comfortable on that individual level, but I just wouldn't like it. I like personally, if I was sitting across someone and they were just like being so disingenuous, and I know he doesn't think that it is in his approach that he's doing it, but everyone knows his public position, including the person he's like sitting across with. Like, and you can just refer to someone as their name. You don't even have to. I mean, their pronoun might come up eventually in a conversation, but if you just address someone by whatever way they change their name, you know, then you can avoid a lot of that awkwardness, I suppose. And if you go through the trouble of actually changing your name, I mean, that's something I feel like I can respect, I guess, because you can't legally change your name, I suppose. However, I did read an article some time ago about a mother who their child transitioned, and she just talked about the pain from her perspective because their child, you know, decided to cut them off, and it was really heartbreaking. Some people like just thought this mother was a monster, and like her love was conditional. I'm like, no, her love isn't conditional because she's still hurt and wounded by it. Like, well, if you have to be a certain way for them to accept you, then your love is conditional. It's like, well, why don't you feel that the child's love is conditional? Why is it that and I'm not even saying that's really that the child's love is conditional. They're confused, and they just need to be away from people who are going to disrupt their worldview, who are going to push back against it, because they're obviously not so confident in how they feel because they need the whole world to affirm it. But the mother talked about how, you know, their daughter took the hormones, and when their daughter spoke to them, it wasn't the voice that she remembered. It was the voice of a stranger. And from the perspective of a parent, I'm like, gosh, it's gotta be awful. And addressing the name, it's not the name that you gave them. We have emotional attachments to names, you know? So obviously, if I'm addressing a stranger who's changed their name, I don't have the same kind of connection that a parent or someone close or personal will have to them. So I definitely see the perspective of someone who's gung-ho about not addressing someone by what's different. I can sympathize with that position personally. Like I talk about Bruce Jenner all the time. I can say Caitlyn. You know, I'm not gonna. You know, Caitlyn's a man. But everyone addresses him as Caitlyn now. Now there's people I know who's like, that's not his government name, and they still call him Bruce. I'll say Bruce, I guess, from time to time, but mostly, you know, we can talk about Caitlyn. I'm going to talk about Caitlyn later with this Gavin Newsom recall. But it really does puzzle me about Ben Shapiro, and Michael Knowles said the same thing too. He said the same thing to Candace Owens. I was trying to find the clip. I saw it on TikTok once, and then I was trying to find the interview, and it just really baffled me too, that he'd have basically the same position, that when they are in private, they would address each other a certain way. Now, there are people, obviously, everything that you might say in private isn't how you publicly present yourself, but normally how you present yourself publicly is unless you have a personality or some kind of profession where your job is to be more bombastic or something, but normally you are kind of more refined, I guess, for public view, and then you might be within like private conversation with someone, I guess. And some people it doesn't really change. Now, unless it's just a little bit disingenuous, but I don't feel that Ben is that way. I just don't feel it's a really well thought out position, which I think he's probably thought about a lot. I just don't think it makes a lot of sense. It's what he's decided. But I just don't think it makes a lot of sense. Because still, if you go back to it's wrong to lie, the lie hasn't changed, whether you're in front of a big crowd or whether you're just with one person. You're just, deciding to spare their feelings as opposed to sparing everyone's feelings who would be upset on the issue. Now, he also makes a distinction that there's so much kind of political climate around it, and he's a public figure, so if he adheres to that standard, there's a lot of kind of repercussions with him and maybe conservative movement and so on if he bows to the whims of like the gender pronoun police. But you've already announced publicly that in private it doesn't matter and you'll bend to the whims. So to me, it's really strange. It's really, really strange. I like to have a conversation with him about it. I just think it's so odd, so weird, so very strange. But anyway, I'm personally not going to change my position on it. I know I've upset some people about it, but at the end of the day, you got to have some respect. Is a two-way street, and you might be saying, well, you're not respecting. I show everyone the same sort of courtesy where I'm going to be honest and upfront with you and upfront with you and upfront with you. And if I'm not honest with you, I don't feel that's respectful. And we can have a difference of opinion, but we're just going to have to agree to disagree right there. That's what adults have to do sometimes when we can't come to some kind of, when we're not going to bend on that. We just have to agree to disagree and compromise with the fact that we are different people and we see things differently. So if you're triggered by that, my stance on it, you're just triggered. You're just triggered. And hopefully you can stomach it, I guess, enough to be part of the discussion or listen. But if not, you have the option to like I said, turn the stream, close down the web browser. But you're not going to police my speech, especially since there are people who definitely want to police speech. And it's if people just wanted to identify the way that they wanted to identify, and it was just a matter of just calling yourself a man and a woman, it wouldn't be as big of a deal. But we know that there's people who want to participate in women's sports, and we know that there's men who want to go to women's prisons. We know that there's boys who want to go in girls' locker room, or men who want to go in a women's spa with their dingleberries hanging out. We know there's men who want to go in battered women's shelters, and so on. So with that in mind, there's always a slippery slope. Always. It never fails. So I'm not giving you footing on my platform. So that's my rant. That's my rant on that. Let's move on. So I want to talk about the California recall with Gavin Newsom. So it's really, really interesting. They have so many people, upwards of more than 40 people running against Gavin Newsom. I think the number is 40. Yeah, 46 qualified people are running. There was a really funny headline from that I read that defined it like as a reality TV star talking about Jenner, and then a Trump supporting conservative radio host or something. And I'm like, Larry Elder is so much more than that. He's been around longer than Trump. But I know a lot of people associate whoever with Trump, but in the headline they don't mention that he's a black conservative. They just say he's a conservative talk show host who supported Trump. So if it's about people are reading in California and they just see a conservative talk show host who's really into Trump, that's obviously written to be a turnoff. And it did eventually say in the article that I read, eventually it got to, well, he's a black conservative who doesn't like Black Lives Matter. Which that's really fair. He talks about them all the time. He talks about that all the time. But I do really dislike how, and I've talked about this before, how people in the media, when there is a black Republican or black conservative or so on, they try to tie their whole entire existence to Trump. They're a person. I'm sure they've had other thoughts, responses, and reasons. There are a lot of people who decided to make the switch or at least come out as conservative because they like Trump and so on. That's undeniable. A lot of people rose to sort of prominence, like hitching a ride to his star. But Larry Elder's been around for a while. And another example that I talked about, I did not like, there was a black congressman who wasn't the black chamber who didn't want to let in him because, and they didn't say why, and so he came on CNN to talk about it with Breonna Keller, I think is her last name. And so she kept saying, why? I know the reason why. I think it's because of Trump. And he's like, how about I talk to them? And we'll see why. That's like for us to work out. But, I've worked, in my local, legislative body with black Democrats. I would like to have the same opportunity in D.C. So I'll just talk to them and we'll figure that out. And she's like, no, I think it's because of Trump. And she's like, roll the montage. And she like rolls the montage. And by the way, it wasn't a great montage. Like if I was putting together a montage of Trump and trying to make him seem like a terrible racist person, I would have did a much better job than what CNN did. Because the things that she played, I'm just like, well, that's not bad, or that's out of context, or why would you put that in there? So it was really puzzling. I'm like, who is her editor? Her editors seem like they're morons. I don't know who puts together a show. Because it was really baffling, but it's offensive because you think this whole man's existence is supposed to be belittled down to a white man, to Donald Trump. So I thought it was interesting that they define him like conservative host who supports Donald Trump, because obviously that's meant to turn off people in California. But mentioning that he didn't like Black Lives Matter, because he does talk a lot about those issues, and that's why he's invited on a lot of times in places to talk about when there's some kind of shooting, to break it down. I think that's not the first time I was introduced to him. Dave Rubin is the first time I saw Larry Elder, or I remember really seeing Larry Elder, at least. But he's been on TV to talk about that a lot. So they did eventually mention that he was black. But he is definitely the person who's pulling ahead as far as like conservative opposition. Now there's Democrats who are on the recall. We'll see how that goes on. So I think they have 1.6 million people who had to sign the petition, which was over the amount that they needed for the recall. Some people are very concerned because there's going to be mail-in ballots, so people are like afraid they're going to steal it. Just make sure that you try to participate in whatever way that you can participate and try to pump out, votes. Tell people why they should vote for Larry Elder. If you live in California, do not just give up. Please do not just give up. I mean, there was a lot of people who gave up in Georgia, and we saw what happened. And you can think it was fraud or something else, like a second time election. No, people were, I know people who were canvassing the area. People were just discouraged about voting, and they didn't go out and vote. And it was close, but the Republicans lost, and Democrats have been able to do some not very good things because they have, with Kamala Harris, they can eke out, past a tie. So there's 46 qualified people on the ballot. Jenner is the most famous person. They just had a debate. Jenner wasn't there because Jenner is filming a reality TV show overseas, which I was talking to one of my sisters about the election, and she said she would not vote for Jenner because Jenner is a, how can I say this delicately? I'm gonna say glory hog. Attention seeker. I can say that. I can say that. There was only like one phrase in my mind. I'm like, I don't want to say that. But Jenner wants attention, is what my sister said. Now Jenner, a lot of people are like, oh yeah, Jenner. I've said we should drop Jenner. Totally should drop Jenner, in my opinion. I think Jenner should drop out. But Jenner basically only has like, typical sort of talking points, cut regulations, and so on. Jenner got a lot of play because Jenner said that boys shouldn't compete against women. But then Jenner said that there should be, he would set up a panel to determine if you can play or not. And part of that would be how long you've been like transitioning or whatever, which would mean like what? If you start at a young age, you're incentivizing people to take hormones earlier. So, like, that is not a conservative position. And I find it really hypocritical as well from the perspective that this person is a trans woman, and you want to set up a panel or whatever to determine who is actually trans enough to compete. No. That sounds like a policy you make up because you think people are going to go along with it and be like, oh, that's a good idea, but it just exposes you as someone who's not down enough with the movement. So there are other reasons, but Jenner should not be the go-to person. When Larry Elder decided to hop in, that I think that was supposed to be a game changer in my opinion. So how the recall will work is that they will have a question: do you want to continue with Gavin Newsom or whatever? People will vote yes or people will vote no. And if they vote yes, if they vote no, they vote that they want a new person to be the governor. That's it. And then whoever gets the top vote, you do not even need to win majority, out of the 46 people, will be the governor. So Larry Elder is, from polls and stuff that I've seen, is the one who pulled out. I wonder if they're going to participate in debates. He wasn't at the debate they had the other day because he was at a fundraiser. But we'll see. We'll see. I wish Larry Elder the best. Some people have pointed out that California is still, like, the legislative body is still very liberal, so there's not much that maybe he'll be able to get done. But at least there'd be stuff he'd be able to stop. California is out there wild. But if he comes up with some good, policies, or tries to drive some, then they might have a good shot. And I think Republicans lost a lot of seats in California in 2018, and they picked up some more in 2020, and there may still be some to pick up afterwards, but we shall see. I really wish him the best. They don't have there's some other debates scheduled. 46 people. Some of them are Democrat, so of course Democrats will have an advantage anyway. But the more people, there's just a lot of people on that ballot. There's a lot of people, and other Republicans as well. But it's really, Jenner's the most famous. Larry Elder, I think, is the best shot, and he's someone who self-identifies as more libertarian, but people mostly consider him a conservative, which he doesn't mind that label, but he does consider himself to be libertarian. If you've never really watched anything with Larry Elder, go watch his interview that he had with Dave Rubin. It was really fascinating. He's a person who started to kind of nudge him away from, well, he was like leaving the left anyway, but that was like right off the cliff when he had an interview with Larry Elder. Really pushed him. And the last thing I want to talk about today is just some things about Joe Biden, and they're really pushing. Well, we talked yesterday about in New York they're going to start enforcing the mandates and so on, And Biden is upset with Florida because they don't like DeSantis. They always want to go after DeSantis. They're going to be going after DeSantis hard for the next couple of years because he's the governor of a swing state. He's very popular, and he is a contender for 2024. And there's a lot of people out there who think he's going to be the next president. There's people who say or think that if Trump does decide to run, DeSantis won't run against him. People in Florida are like, we're selfish. We don't want you to take him so he can't go be president. I'm just like, let us have him. So I don't think they'll run. Maybe they won't run against each other in a primary. I'm not totally convinced. I keep saying this. I'm not totally convinced that Trump is going to run again in 2024. I'm just not totally convinced. There's just a lot that can happen in the world of politics. And I don't know. He's chilling on his golf courses and not being attacked every day. And there's so many people who are like, oh my gosh, we should have voted for you. And he still believes that whether you believe he's lying or other people are lying, he believes he won. He believes he was cheated. So he just believes he was cheated. He doesn't believe he lost, so he doesn't have that weight. And now he's seeing crisis at the border, inflation crazy. They don't have a handle on the vaccines. Well, they're making it seem like they don't because they're like variants and trying to twist people's arms and stuff. So Trump is just sitting back, relaxed, like, I was right. I tried to tell you. So, and he can back talk at the golf course in the tower wherever he wants to be. And not get involved and have to have his family, be berated by the press and Democrats and whoever every day for the next 4 years if he runs again and becomes president again. Now, do I believe that he'd want to do it just to be like, I came back, and won again? Sure. I think that's in him. But I don't know. So much can happen in a couple years. Politics is so much happens. Think about how much happened in Trump's 4 years. Or how much has happened this year. Politics is a wild animal, and there's just too many variables right now. But I can tell you DeSantis is looking pretty good as far as pushing back up against Biden. So Biden is upset. They're trying to point out a spike in cases in Florida, and they're so obsessed with cases and not really talking about deaths too much. They're always talking about cases. And they probably also want to distract from like conversations about Cuomo and stuff as well. Really try to focus the media's attention on DeSantis and trying to bash him. But a lot of people in Florida really, really like him. He's a popular governor. And a lot of people travel and go there. So there's their bubble and their world they're trying to create. And then there's like reality. Reality of how everyone wants to go to Florida and be in Florida. So many people I knew was going to Florida, escaping Florida, trying to move to Florida. So many people. So many people I'm just like, y'all all leaving me behind. I want to go to Florida. I have not been yet. So Biden was like, if you're not going to do anything, you need to let businesses decide what they're going to do that's right as far as masking and vaccines and et cetera. So DeSantis went hard on him. And so Jen had some comments. So I'm going to play her a little bit. I know how much we love listening to Jen Psaki.
Also on the COVID front, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is now fundraising off of President Biden's comments for him to, quote, get out of the way of people trying to help battle the COVID surge in that state. DeSantis has said, standing in your way, not going anywhere, and referred to the president as a power-hungry tyrant. What is your response to the governor and the administration's response to the governor? And is the president considering reaching out to DeSantis to talk this over?
Well, first, from day one, we've approached this not as a political issue, but a public health issue. We remain in touch with officials in Florida, just like we're in touch with officials from around the country about how we can provide assistance from the federal level to help address this public health crisis. What I have cited and what the president has cited is publicly available data about public health and the impact in Florida. It is factual and it is a fact and data that you all are aware of, that 25% of hospitalizations in the country are in Florida. It is also a fact that the governor has taken steps that are counter to public health recommendations. So we're here to state the facts. Frankly, our view is that this is too serious, deadly serious, to be doing partisan name calling. That's what we're not doing here. We're focused on providing public health data, information to the people of Florida to make sure they understand what steps they should be taking, even if those are not steps taken at the top of the leadership in that state.
So just a little reminder, Biden was calling people Neanderthals. So, and the other day he said the unvaccinated aren't as smart as I thought they were. Which is interesting because the highest population of of ethnic groups who are not vaccinated, we talked about this yesterday, are Black people. It's not even close. It's not even close. Like we went through the states, and in some states you have white people all the way up at like 93%. Like Vermont was really high, but so many people in the 90s and 80s and so on. And then went with like Asians and Hispanics, but Blacks people, oh my gosh. The highest I saw was 43%, and that was in Washington, D.C. And they still having people masked out, and that's one of the most compliant places in the nation. But they still want to hinder people. It's amazing. So, Biden is not above name calling. It's something that he really likes to do. It's funny that so many things that people claim they didn't like about Trump, Biden is like worse on a lot of those fronts. People said that Trump lied about things. I call him the master exaggerator, but Biden is a fierce liar. He will lie boldly about things that are easy to verify. You know, they say Trump was a bully. Biden will name call. He's rude to the media. Him and Obama, like the Obama administration, they were not kind to the press. Like they could have like their relationship was kind of like in Mean Girls. When there was a girl who's like, Regina George punched me in the face and it was awesome. Like they'd applaud and just clap for their president while they were like spying on you, prosecuting you, and so on. Far worse than Trump on a lot of things. And of course people say Trump is racist. And most of the examples people cite when they tend to come at me are just silly things. Like Vox has this big, I think it's Vox, has this big list of things that they claim that Trump did was racist, and just so much of it is just nonsense. But Biden, we know Biden's got some stuff. A list. As a matter of fact, I have a shirt. To defeat white supremacy, denounce Joe Biden, and it's got a list of some stuff on the back of the shirt about some racist stuff that he did or said. It comes in short sleeve. It comes in long sleeve. I have a long sleeve myself. So a lot of things people claim that they don't like about Trump, they got someone totally worse than Biden. But they did this mind jujitsu thing and just duped everybody and convinced people to vote for Biden to save the nation, to save the soul of the nation, as if he were Jesus. Oh my gosh. What a terribly arrogant thing to say. Terribly arrogant thing to say. So DeSantis smacked them really good. And he talked about how if they're that concerned about COVID, why do we have open borders? Why do we have all these people spilling through that aren't vaccinated? If you really cared about controlling this crisis, this virus, then why aren't you protecting the southern border? Why is that not under control? And they've had some time. Mark Levin went on like an epic rant the other day, and talking about how there's so many things the Biden administration is doing wrong. Like, how could you do so many things wrong unless it's on purpose? With the border, they're very bad messaging on COVID, the inflation and so on. There's just so many things that are bad happening at the same time. And so a big story out right now is about how the rent moratorium where you're not supposed to be able to evict anyone, it ran out. And so the Supreme Court, or was supposed to run out, and the Supreme Court ruled it really shouldn't be constitutional, but and it was a 5-4 opinion, and the logic or thinking was, but it's about to run out, and if in the future, if Congress wants to do something, the Congress needs to act. And so you had people in Congress who were like, Nancy Pelosi was like, Biden should just do something. He should just do something himself. And it's like, or if it's that important to you, because you're the Speaker of the House, in Congress. So, I mean, you could try to pass something, work it out. But no. And so Biden decided, even though he doesn't have the legal authority, they were going to extend the CDC blocking evictions. And there were so many headlines from the press, just like, oh, they don't know if it's legal, but it's great that he's doing this. If Trump was like, hey, I'm going to do something illegal now. I know it's illegal, but I know I can get away with it, so I'm going to do it. These people were mad that Mike Lindell got on the podium and talked about how God delivered him from crack cocaine. So these people would have pitched a fit. They treated him so unfairly. I didn't love Trump complaining all the time about it, but he was not wrong. Such crazy double standards. So people are aware that Biden has, there's an acknowledgement that they're not supposed to do that, but they're openly defying a ruling of the Supreme Court, and they know that there needs to be litigation, so there's going to be time before, it's sued and they have to end up at whatever court again, so Biden can pass and do whatever he needs to in the meantime. Whether that's giving more people money to pay rent, which at this point, why don't people have money to pay rent? We had, the stimulus checks. People had the unemployment. There's people not going back to work. Now there's some people who probably were laid off of bigger jobs or something with higher pay, and now they can't find jobs that paid as much. I know people who fell into that and kind of had to downgrade a bit. There's definitely cases out there. But let's be real, there's just some people who just didn't pay rent because they knew that they didn't have to. It didn't erase rent. But I wouldn't be surprised if that was where people were going to start going, trying to get some kind of forgiveness, rent forgiveness. But I guess if they get a stimulus or some kind of package that's big enough, they don't need it to be quite as a forgiveness, but they might advise people to allocate funds from the other COVID relief bill for that. But the point is, there's people who have property who aren't getting paid, like rent people. Landlords are people too. They have families too. They're trying to run a business. They are not just evil slumlords. Some are, I guess, but they are not like evil twisted mustache capitalists. No, that's not how life is. Like so many people who talk about big corporations or how they hate corporations and stuff like that. Have you ever watched Shark Tank? I know you probably have. All those people have dreams and backstories. Those are the faces of business owners, of the people who own the local store or the shop, the medium-sized shop or whatever. They're people who start off with a dream. Had to get their family involved, had to associate so much risk. At one point, maybe they thought they were going to lose everything, and then they had a good break or whatever, and they built their company. They want to take care of their employees and their families and so on. There's people with all sorts of stories and backgrounds, and a lot of them are just like you. It is not some mysterious dark force from the other side of the moon. They are people. These landlords are people who can't get paid. And The CDC doesn't have this sort of power to keep extending it. They just don't. And Biden knows it, but they don't care. And so why would you keep making properties if it's possible that you're not going to be able to get people in the buildings? So, I mean, prices are already going up on homes. It's expensive to build homes because, you know, lumber and steel and so on are expensive. The materials to build it are costly. So, I don't know. We're just headed maybe to a shortage, maybe. Who knows? But we're just not in a good situation with the economy. Our economy should be like stupid roaring right now, just crazy, because we had an artificial depression. And they could have just made it so people went back to work and tried to live on with their lives. But they didn't want that. They extended the benefits of people on unemployment. You got people who are so fatigued because they had to work through the whole pandemic. And some people weren't. Granted, there were shortages and stuff, people who didn't want to work. So the people who did go and work, they are burned out. You know, there's people who just aren't, you know, decided to change up careers or whatever because they can't take it anymore. And that's why some nurses are quitting and stuff as well. It's not just nurses, but particularly in that profession, I heard some people were just burned out. But also, and now you have people who are going to have to leave their job because they don't want to get vaccinated. So there's all these different factors that you're pushing on people, and it's just not a good way to run the economy. It's a mess. It's a mess. So I'm going to play this video of Jen Psaki talking about this a little bit, and we'll react.
Go ahead, Kelly.
The earlier moratorium used the same legal justification that the new one is using, which in layman's terms is about preventing the spread of disease if you evict people at a time of pandemic. So the only real difference is narrowing location, but the rationale is the same. So after the president was clear that it wasn't legal, Gene Sperling was clear that it wasn't legal, is this a roll the dice and see if it gets challenged position from an administration that may be doing something it knows is not on legal standing?
Well, the president would not have supported moving forward with any action where he didn't feel there was legal standing and legal support. We obviously don't control what the courts do, and we have, of course, seen what the Supreme Court decided and how they ruled, which was not related to public health, as you well know, Kelly, and was related to the relationship between the landlord and the renter. But this is different in that it is more targeted. It is focused on counties with higher substantial case rates to protect renters, and CDC ultimately decided to adopt it. I would also note that the conditions have changed. The rise of the Delta variant, especially in communities where there are large numbers of unvaccinated individuals, where there are growing case numbers, is certainly something that has raised the alarm for us. It has raised the alarm for members of Congress, and it has certainly added to the need to take this additional step.
I'm sorry, but she's a liar. Of course she knows, and they all know that they don't have a good standing there, but they can get away with it for the meantime while they try to pass whatever through. You know, they'll just have to get sued a lot. Like Obama was sued a lot. Trump got sued a lot, but that's because people didn't like him. That's because people didn't like him. Obama got sued because he did a lot of illegal crap all the time. And Biden's no different. They'll just try to push through whatever they can push through. They don't care about the rule of law. He doesn't care about his oath to the Constitution. He's going to do what he wants to do, especially with all the people in his ear. I don't even know how much he can actually function himself. He's always making jokes about, like, I can't say this, they'll get me. Like, are you an abused man, elderly man? Like, what's going on, show? What's going on? But they'll push what they can push through because they are very authoritative and I don't know. It seems to me that they just have it. Well, obviously they have a different view of governing, but there's a lot of people I believe who feel that if they're not doing something, then they are governing poorly. If they're not, I don't know, creating new laws or whatever. I feel that the best way to govern is to facilitate basically so that the government won't have to really be much of a factor. That you were creating an environment that people can thrive on their own. But Biden is determined to keep pushing the need of government on people, like doing these payments, these cash payments to families, like $300, and so on, continuously. If you want to opt out, you can go ahead and opt out, FYI. But they are really creating a dependency. And they're like, we're getting people out of poverty. No, people will just adjust. If they're bad with money, they'll just adjust. Oh, we know the $300 is going to be here so they can, I don't know, spend a different kind of way. If people are bad with money and they don't know how to budget, they don't know how to budget. They'll spend on a new phone or something. If you work in retail, you'll see people come in and how they spend their money. And there's people out here who spent COVID money on getting work done, like boobs and so on. They spend on bills, they spend it on boobs. People spend it on shoes. Oh my gosh. Converse, Nike, like at the local mall. They were having Black Friday days like all the time. Which for them, I suppose, is nice because they did continuously pay their people throughout the pandemic. Because my sister worked for Converse. So, until they opened back up, they were continuously paying their staff. Eventually it was like a reduced amount that maybe, than what she would have had. But she had a consistent check. And there was people who, I guess if they're unemployment, they would have been paid more. So maybe, I don't know if some people resented that or not. But there's some people who had a very, very hard time collecting their unemployment because it was just haywire and crazy and stuff was stalled. Like one of my sisters, it was very hard for her to get her unemployment. So good on Nike, I guess, because they were at least trying to take care of their staff. And they were selling like crazy, but I just said that to say, where were you going that you needed all them shoes to spend your COVID money on the shoes or all your unemployment money on the shoes? People wanted to buy what they wanted to buy. And then on top of that, you had looting. People started to loot because Black Lives Matter, all the protests and stuff, people were going around looting everything. So you can't just think that you're just going to give people more money and it's going to uplift. We've had a war on poverty. Doesn't really work. What we need is a war on too much government control. And that's the fight we got to start fighting. That is a fight we have to start fighting. Because these people is doing too much. These people are doing far too much. Well, anyway, that's all I got for you guys today. Please check out blacktnews.com. Check out articles that I've written. Please check out the store. If you guys would like to get anything, go ahead. That does help with the show. We got some really cool stuff. I really do love it. You Are Not That Special shirt. So go ahead, get something that you like or get something for someone else. If you would like to support, you can go to blacktnews.com/donate to support in that way. I appreciate whatever you guys can do on that front. I appreciate every like, every share, especially a share. If you're subscribed, if you like the page, if you're watching on Facebook, please share it also on YouTube and stuff as well. Wherever you're at, follow me across different platforms. Check out my TikTok. I played a TikTok earlier in this episode. So that's at blacktnews. That's at blacktnews. My Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok are all at blacktnews, and my Twitter is the only one that's different, and that's at trueblackt. Thank you guys very much, and I'll see you tomorrow.